The recent revelation that the voter profiling company Cambridge Analytica harvested data from 50 million Facebook users has raised an uproar over the digital business model of consumers giving up their data for free services. Josh Edelson, Agence France Presse, Getty Images, San Francisco. The contemporary internet was built on a bargain. Show us who you really are and the digital world will be free to search or share. People detailed their interests and obsessions on Facebook and Google, generating a river of data that could be collected and harnessed for advertising. The companies became very rich. Users seemed happy. Privacy was deemed obsolete, like bloodletting and milkmen. Now, the consumer surveillance model underlying Facebook and Google's free services is under siege from users, regulators and legislators on both sides of the Atlantic. It amounts to a crisis for an internet industry that up until now had taken a reactive, whack-a-mole approach to problems like the spread of fraudulent news and misuse of personal data. The recent revelation that Cambridge Analytica, a voter profiling company that had worked with Donald J. Trump's presidential campaign, harvested data from 50 million Facebook users, raised the current uproar, even if the origins lie as far back as the 2016 election. It has been many months of allegations and arguments that the internet in general and social media in particular are pulling society down instead of lifting it up. That has inspired a good deal of debate about more restrictive futures for Facebook and Google. At the furthest extreme, some dream of the companies becoming public utilities. More benign business models that depend less on ads and more on subscriptions have been proposed, although it's unclear why either company would abandon something that has made them so prosperous. The Cambridge Analytica case is much more serious because here we witness the threat to democracy, to democratic plurality, said Vera Jourova, the European Union Commissioner for Justice, Consumers and Gender Equality. François Lenoir, Reuters. Congress might pass targeted legislation to restrict consumer data use in specific sectors, such as a Senate bill that would require increased transparency in online political advertising, said Daniel J. Weitzner, director of the Internet Policy Research Initiative at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. There are other avenues still, said Yasha Kakes-Wolf, the chief marketing officer of Mozilla, the non-profit organization behind the popular Firefox browser, including advertisers and large tech platforms collecting vastly less user data and still effectively customizing ads to consumers. They are just collecting all the data to try to find magic growth algorithms. Mr. Kakes-Wolf said of online marketers. This past week, Mozilla halted its ads on Facebook, saying the social network's default privacy settings allowed access to too much data. The greatest likelihood is that the internet companies, frightened by the tumult, will accept a few more rules and work a little harder for transparency. And there will be hearings on Capitol Hill. The next chapter is also set to play out not in Washington but in Europe, where regulators have already cracked down on privacy violations and are examining the role of data in online advertising. Cambridge Analytica's offices in London. Following the revelations about Cambridge Analytica's data harvesting, Facebook's chief executive Mark Zuckerberg seemed to accept the possibility of increased privacy regulation. Daniel Leal-Olivas, Agence France Presse, Getty Images. The Cambridge Analytica case, said Vera Jourova, the European Union Commissioner for Justice, Consumers and Gender Equality, was not just a breach of private data. This is much more serious, because here we witness the threat to democracy, to democratic plurality, she said. Although many people had a general understanding that free online services used their personal details to customize the ads they saw, the latest controversy starkly exposed the machinery. Consumers' seemingly benign activities, their likes, could be used to covertly categorize and influence their behavior. And not just by unknown third parties. Facebook itself has worked directly with presidential campaigns on ad targeting, describing its services in a company case study as influencing voters. People are upset that their data may have been used to secretly influence 2016 voters, said Alessandro Acquisti, a professor of information technology and public policy at Carnegie Mellon University. If your personal information can help sway elections, which affects everyone's life and societal well-being, maybe privacy does matter after all. In interviews, Mr. Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook's chief operating officer, seemed to accept the possibility of increased privacy regulation, something that would have been unlikely only a few months ago. But some trade group executives also warned that any attempt to curb the use of consumer data would put the business model of the ad-supported internet at risk. Facebook has worked directly with presidential campaigns on ad targeting, once describing its services as influencing voters. You're undermining a fundamental concept in advertising, reaching consumers who are interested in a particular product, said Dean C. Garfield, chief executive of the Information Technology Industry Council, a trade group in Washington, whose members include Amazon, Facebook, Google and Twitter. If suspicion of Facebook and Google is a relatively new feeling in the United States, it has been embedded in Europe for historical and cultural reasons that date back to the Nazi Gestapo, the Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe and the Cold